Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It is your favorite Dark Sorcerer here, Michael Hyson, aka Angelus Son of Abaddon. And tonight I'd like to discuss with you and kind of give you the rundown of what a warlock is through both history, mythology, and most importantly, the etymology of the terminology that is used just upon this type of sorcerer, okay? Or witch, whatever you want to name them, okay? Now, I've been getting a lot of, well, I wouldn't say a lot of them, but I've been getting a lot of questions regarding the terminology of warlocks. I have also seen a lot of questions on Facebook and other social media outlets based off this very topic. And there's been a lot of disputes, sometimes heavily argumentative disputes. Sometimes they get a little, well, let's just say hostile in nature. So, hello, Salute. So, tonight I thought, why not bring out my grimoire and kind of just read to you my own notes through my own personal study. Okay. Hey, divine spirits. How you doing today? I'm doing all right. Better than the last 24 to 48 hours. That's for sure. My son's mom would attest to that as well. We had the same thing. Not sure if it was food poisoning or just the flu. It was one of them. But, anyways, now a lot of the questions that come up are more of the modern day views of a warlock as an oathbreaker and betrayer. Yes, my own personal grimoire. I've taken a lot of notes and I've recently actually typed up a lot of them, all of my notes from various different sources and everywhere that I got my information from. So I know where it's coming from. Okay. So, yes, it is my personal grimoire that I have had years of information that I put in, notes that I've taken to understand terms, definitions, linguistics, you name it, it's in there. Not just demons and angels and the jinn, the Loa, Ugan, they're all there. Anything that I've practiced and walked for a long time is in this grimoire. So, anyways, as I was saying, yeah, it's good you're doing well. Yeah, I wouldn't know about that. Salute. Um, I think it was just modern, the flu type thing, just by the symptoms that we had. But anyways, as I was saying, the modern day views of a warlock is this: an oathbreaker and betrayer. Okay, this is the etymology of Anglo-Saxon and Welsh perspectives. It is what has heavily influenced the thought form within pagan and Wiccan and Wicca practices. Okay, without going into other sources. Now, I'm going to go into some of these details. Now, other practitioners, such as Christopher Penziak, refers to it as a title, much like Satan being the title given to anyone who is the adversary of anything else. Okay, when we think of the Church of Satan and the term that Anton Zandela they utilized, meaning adversary, the bad guy badge, okay, as he put it in the Devil's Notebook. All right. Now, by being this adversary, a warlock is considered an outcast, someone who's an oathbreaker, betrayer, a traitor. Okay. So I'm going to get into this a little bit here, but I'm going to be reading from my own grimoire so you can actually understand the full definition of the title of warlock. But I'm also going to be going into the term and what sorcery is about, and I'm going to give you some names of individuals that have been recorded as practicing warlocks and sorcerers of both light and dark. Okay. Now, according to Hans Holzer in the book Witches, a warlock's knowledge is derived by the mastering of the arts he can get his hands upon, and is feared due to his nature of either healing or harming an individual through sleight of hand tricks of the mastered techniques he has acquired and gathered. Okay. Now, according to Christopher Penziak, many definitions speak upon what a warlock is and where its meaning derives from within the world's religious views. In ancient times, a warlock is a wise man who practices witchcraft of some sort, normally in the art of conjuration. Okay. Over time, through religious warfare, the name became associated with the bad guy aspects, as Anton Szandor LaVey once put it in the book The Devil's Notebook. However, the meaning of the warlock today is viewed as an oathbreaker and betrayer due to every coven believing they are correct, when in reality a warlock simply is another name for sorcerer, sage, mage, sorceress, necromancer, and wizard, according to Christopher Penziak in his book, The Outer Temple of Witchcraft. And if you have that book, you can go under what is it, page, I want to say 7 or 8, and again in page 27. Okay, and you can actually read down through the etymology that he gives. Okay, do your own research in that area, and you'll understand why he wrote it the way he did. However, this math, however, the Master Grimoire is placed basically all the knowledge of angel and demonolatry, herbalism, alchemy, and numerology, and historical and mythological meanings within the utmost spellings and meanings of the names. So, anyways, warlocks are known for using just about every aspect that they can get their hands on, from herbalism to, say, for an example, if we go into Nicholas Remy's book, Demonolatry, an ancient account of historical witchcraft, okay, we see where three powders were mostly used and identified by the so-called witches and warlocks who were persecuted. The black powders are which kills, which is a poison added to drinks and foods, much like hemlock, um, wolfsbane, or say, for an example, anything with ricin. Even coriander. One of the many types there. Okay, ashen, which is a powder that that appears reddish in color and makes the victim sick. Okay, this comes across as an amber color, and what this does is it weakens the body. It brings on ailments of sickness, much like food poisoning, if you wish. White powder, which is utilized within the healing arts. Okay, you think of things like mint, or say, for an example, melon juice. Okay, melon juice is, say, considered to be a blood, um, not a blood thinner, but what do you call that? A blood purifier. Lemon juice, for an example, in the primal sense, is a blood cleanser. Okay, it cleanses the blood, but it also prevents gallbladder stones and, say, for example, kidney stones. Okay, blueberries deal with other aspects and such. All right, so you can see where these come in. And I actually went in and typed down several things like conium, also known as hemlock, norium, Orlander, also known as Oriolander, and what their effects are. Okay, but I'm going to go to the next page because this is where I'm going to break down the warlocks' traditions. Deceptive warlocks prefer guile and sheer power through self-taught. Uses long-range fighting spells. Their personality is cunning and highly intelligent. Scourge warlocks prefer raw power and can be lethal both close and far. They can be dangerous to both themselves and others, even though they can be safe to self. They serve elder devils in the outer realms. Okay. And what's interesting here is Saloon, Glacia, Asmodeus, Mephistopheles, Cyric, Kral, Khazid, and Loth are just a few of the demonic names that can be invoked. Okay. And what's ironic here is if you go into Francis Barrett's book, The Magus, which is a grimoire in itself, part 1 and 2. In part 1, he gives the 12 stages, okay, or the 12 ranking systems. And the warlocks come after, and witches come after devils. Okay, they're basically practitioners and they come before humans. All right. And that is something that's very, very interesting to understand, which I found very, very cool. And not only did I find, when I was Googling all this stuff as well, I also found warlocks to be also in gaming systems as well, such as role-playing games like D&D. I know a lot of people seem to get into that game. I could never get into it because I don't understand the whole role-playing aspect. Probably because I just never cared to get into it. But anyways, the types of magic. Sebastian School of Sorcery in Arizona within the Grand Canyon, which is one of their few schools worldwide, is hard to get into due to them being beyond stringent to the requirements required to enter their schools. This is basically Ravenheart's school. Okay, those of you who have gotten the books or the grimoires, say for example the Apprentice Wizard, or that of the Grimoire of the Apprentice Wizard, or the Compendium, of the Apprentice Wizard. This is their school, that they have, and there's like 3 of them worldwide, from what I understand and what I've researched, which is pretty cool. I didn't even realize that there were schools outside of certain organizations that prefer to teach you in their own unique manner. All right. The 3 types of sorcery are as follows. Sorcerers are considered the most powerful and recognized by the rings they wear. Their power is derived by lineage and association with dark gods and demons to whom they worship. Wizards are former witches seeking to strive to be more than what they are. They strive to master the energies within and outside of themselves. And the third is witches and warlocks are considered the least powerful. This is due to the conflicts raged between various traditions of witchcraft. There are, however, two types of practitioners in the world, which are as follows. Okay, learned witches and warlocks. This is basically those who are self-taught. Okay, basically I wouldn't go as far as saying that they're self-taught. It's more of the fact that they are taught by more traditional or elder practitioners. The Red Book of Appin describes a wizard that you seek out in the dead of night on a trail, much like the Faustian deal at the crossroads, where you have to deny 3 times, and on the third time you are taken as an apprentice. And there's a lot of things that you have to do that, how should I say this? It is what you have to do to become initiated, like setting up a temple, a sacred space with ground bones and animal blood and writings and runes and stuff like that. Most likely in a monastery or not, or a coliseum, if you wish. You know, the Red Book of Appin was a pretty good grimoire. Okay. This type is considered inferior due to being taught by a high priest or priestess or book learned. So you're seeing right there what I said is true. There is two types. Basically, they're learning from a higher up or they're book learned. The next is hereditary witches and warlocks. The hereditary witches and warlocks are viewed as natural practitioners due to family lineages. Okay, and when you think of family lineage, think of Native Americans, where or even that of Vikings, where stories and songs are passed down. Okay, if you have a history of, say, if we go into the Solomantic practices, like the Keys of Solomon, it speaks of the seventh son of the seventh son. Um, I believe Agrippa in the three books of occult philosophy also said that, if I remember correctly. I might be wrong. And if I am, I do apologize for that. But the old expression, the seventh son of the seventh son, is a hereditary family line. Okay. It means the more generations infused with this magic makes them more powerful, more potent. Okay. This is due, they have some natural abilities that are classified as being supernatural in nature, such as psychic abilities, empathic abilities, just to name a couple for an example. This is why hereditary witches and warlocks are more powerful than the first. The prime example of powerful magic can be seen within the Akashic records, the dimensional levels of mastery. Okay, and I'll get into that in just a couple of seconds. But first, I want to tell you about a couple of known practitioners. Dmitri Diabli, Diabli is how you spell his last name. The most powerful sorcerer of all time, was also an evil magician. Ian McTavish, McTavish, was the most powerful sorcerer on Earth. Light magician. Okay, is what he was classified as. Okay, now to go on, you'll understand why I waited to tell you about them. Okay, the three types of magic are as follows: hyper magic, mastery of all magic within the multiverse and parallel universes within the Milky Way and beyond. Omni magic, which is the mastery of all magic within our omniverse. This is said to melt dark hearts, paving way to omniverse godhood status. Macro magic, mastery of the infinite magic, paving way to one macroverse god. This is rare due to most who strive for this position don't come close to achieving it. From all the magics, it takes one of purity and strength to reach this goal. The complete dedication within the arts and practices of all magical works reveals true benefits, but one must listen to the guides and masters of those you serve. Okay? Now, a lot of topics really get into this, not just from a physical legal point of view, but also that of religious beliefs. Okay? For an example, in the Bible, 2 Corinthians 4:4, in whom the God of this world hath blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel, of Christ, yada, 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 is the image of God should shine upon them. Okay. Right there, you have that God sense. Okay. Deuteronomy 6:5, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God, okay, with all thy heart. So if you're serving Satan, according to chapter 4, verse 4, in the King James Version, Satan is the God of this world, and Satan is the accuser, the opposer, the bad guy, okay, from Jewish, Hebrew, and Islamic traditions down to more modern day Judo Christianity, okay? So then you go into Mark 12, chapter 12, verse 20, and thou shalt love, which is basically the same thing, except for it adds in with all thy soul and with all thy strength, yada, yada, yada. This is the first commandment, okay? And John 14:6 says, Jesus saith unto them, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto thy Father but by me. Okay, so if we're going into warlocks, such as, say, for an example, the scriptures that deal with sorcery, witchcraft, necromancy, okay, you take Saul in the Old Testament, where he literally sends out people to find a seer, a necromancer, a blood sorceress, to where he would scry for them, or that this person would scry. This is the Witch of Endor. And yes, witches have been known to be called warlocks from time to time. Okay. It is very true that they can be called that. Okay. But you can see where in religions, no matter what religion you are, that you're either seen as a god, such as in Satanism, Hail Satan, according to the atheistic Satanists, means hail thyself. Now, according to the Enochian keys, for an example, this is, hey Judah, welcome to the video. In, how should I say this? Well, my mind just went blank on that one. But anyways, Soul ended up going underneath the cloak of night to the Witch of Endor. Okay. Now here's the kicker. She basically called him out on his bullshit. Okay. Being the opposer. Why are you trying to entrap me? Okay. Now think of spiritual warfare. Spiritual warfare is going on all over the world, not just in this world, but also the astral plane, Aetheris and the black heavens, the heavens, you name it, it's there. Okay. It's always going to be there until there's unification. All right. Now, with that said, you've also got other individuals, other things. For an example, in Exodus, I think it's 20, was it chapter 22, 18, verse 18, I think. My memory is sound, where it says, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. Okay. But you see, even in the Bible, you'll see the adversary. aspects and what happens to the adversary, meaning they're being punished for what they do. Okay, every Bible, from the Quran to the Jewish Bible to the Hebrew Bible to the Judeo-Christian Bibles, all speak of this, because everybody's fighting for that godhood. Okay, now even with all these other godhood statuses, be it serving Satan, like in the Enochian Keys, where it says, "Be friendly unto me, for we are both the highest worshiper." We are the true worshipers of the highest and infallible King of Hell. Okay, this is out of the Satanic Bible by Anton Zander LaVey, but is also within the Enochian Keys by John Dee. Okay, and it's interesting because other individuals who have talked about being warlocks, Dr. Tom Wells, for an example, did a video on YouTube on warlocks. Okay, the three types of warlocks, which I found very, very interesting. Um, and what's interesting to know is that when they seek godhood, evolution, ascension, or descension, one scripture comes to mind, which is Genesis chapter 3, verse 22. And it says, "And the Lord God said, Behold, man has become like one of us, to know good and evil, and knew lest he put his hand forth and take also of the tree of life." Now, the tree of life is in the Kabbalah, the Klapoth, okay, the nine realms. It's in the very image of the nine realms in Norse mythology, okay. But even the Bible says that there are other gods. Look at Genesis chapter 3, verse 5. Then go to chapter 3, verse 22, and you're going to see the exact same thing, okay. Exodus 22, verse 18. That's the one it was. Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. Deuteronomy 18, verse 10. There shall not be found among you anyone who maketh his son or daughter pass through the fire. Basically, the tests of being a sorcerer, okay, a witch, a warlock. Anyone who uses divination or an observer of times, an enchanter or a witch. 1 Samuel 15:23. For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry, because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord. He has then rejected thee from being the king. Okay, from being king. All right. Now you notice what that last part was. He has also rejected thee from being king. Okay. Now, what did it say in Genesis chapter 5? For the Lord does fear that in the day that ye eat thereof of the tree, the fruit of the tree of life, ye shall become as gods, knowing good and evil. Okay, basically, you will become a god. Verse 22 clearly states that man has become like as one of us. Okay, so therefore, the fact that the JCI talks a lot about him being the Alpha and the Omega is a load of horseshit. Okay, literally, it's bogus. It just got canceled out right there. Jehovah, Jireh, Yahweh, whatever the name is that they want to use for their God, is out the window right there. It just got blown out of the water. Because in 2 Corinthians 4:4, it clearly states the God of this world by name, and that name is Satan. Okay. But when we go into, say, other works, such as 2 Chronicles 33, verse 6, and he caused his children to pass through the fire in the valley of the son, as in Son, Hinnom, and he also observed times and used witchcraft and dealt with familiar spirits and with wizards. He wrought much evil in the sight of the Lord to provoke him to anger. Galatians, even in the New Testament, we also see Galatians chapter 5, verse 20. We also see it again in Hebrews 13, verse 5. Okay. and in a couple other locations as well, where it talks about idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, and heresies. Okay, and this is mostly from the Dark Ages on to more modern times through their thought forums. Okay, now as you can see, let me grab the witch's book real fast. All right. This is the witch's book by Hans Holzer. Okay. Now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go to page 500. Okay. You can start at there, or you can go right into page 501. Okay. An American example of a practicing warlock is Theodore J. Rubian, Rabouin. In his late 30s, Mr. Rubian lives in Westborough, Massachusetts, and has been a practitioner of his craft for about 7 years. And he puts great, and I'm going to say this again, significance to this fact. Furthermore, 2 of his great-great-great-grandfathers were executed for practicing witchcraft in Canada and France. And so he himself is a kind of hereditary warlock. Okay. This guy actually is a licensed practitioner, but he's also a licensed medical professional. Okay. Basically, it goes down for this entire page. Today, Mr. Rubian is an aide for a local hospital working closely with psychiatrist M. Greenberg. He is not content with merely being a warlock, but has engaged in various psychic activities as well, such as an attempt to exorcise ghosts or using his own ESP powers to help people. Okay, by his own admission, his involvement in the occult has rendered him more and more unworldly. Okay, go to the next page. You have Michael Howard. Okay, is an intense young man in his early 20s who makes a living as a gardener. Now, remember what I said about in my grimoire about herbalism? In alchemy plays a huge part in this. Okay, in the practices of any form of sorceries, magics, as witches, warlocks use gardening. They go out, collect plants, and everything like that. Now, this guy, he lives not far from London, England. Okay, and he is a traditional Wicca practitioner. Basically, he's not a traditional Wicca practitioner. He has dim views on them. According to the young man, the Gardnerian witches are not real witches, and the Druidic witches I met have nothing to do with genuine witchcraft. He, on the other hand, being of the medieval tradition, more closely represents the true image of what he considers more valid paganism. Okay? Mr. Howard worships, among others, the goat foot god of ceremonial magic, the same deity the Greeks called Pan, and he makes clear he worships the forces behind the symbol, not the symbol itself. He worships of the goat god is purely metaphysical and based upon the idea that all gods are one in that this is the creative force manifest throughout nature. Okay? And what's interesting to know is he even goes down further and talks about the Knights of Templar and Satanism in this as well. But those are just a couple of names that I wanted to bring up here. Another great source of information is more modern day. Within the last 10 to 20 years, a lot of individuals going, mostly going back to the COS, the Church of Satan, really put emphasis on warlocks and witches, okay, as actual practitioners, a rank that you can work up to. A lot of individuals from the Joy of Satan to, which personally I don't really care for, I find their lack of sensibility and actual practice to be kind of hypocritical and more about lust rituals and all that stuff, which really isn't a big part of sorcery or any form of witchcraft in general, which is why I don't commune with them. Now, here's the kicker. When we get into Paul Huzon, Paul Huzon wrote a book called Mastering Witchcraft for the witch and warlocks. Okay, his views of the term warlock is unbiased. This is more modern. All right. So when we get into witchcraft, you're going to see various different traditions just on that. Okay. Now, getting back into my grimoire. Let's see, where is it? This is what I get for closing the book. Yeah, let's see. All right. Remember what I said about the legal system, okay, being the laws of the land. Laws of the land due to magic, the dual magic, okay? Witchcraft has been viewed by many types worldwide. However, the laws of the land determine the outcome of magic practiced at any given time. For an example, in African traditions, sorcerers or sorceresses in another tribe, in one tribe, can be seen as cultural beneficial in both black and white magical practices, whereas in another tribe, magic that is beneficial to the culture and causing no issues is concerned white or good magic, whereas in anything baneful causing issues within society is dubbed evil or black magic. Okay. Even though the laws are different from tribe to tribe or nation to nation, the views of the legal system remain the same. Populace forgets that the ancient traditions of practitioners of the magic practices answered solely to the king of the tribe, and in turn, the tribe did nothing without first consulting the sorcerer or sorceress, the witch or warlock. Okay. Today, they're more seen as medicine men and women. Okay. Of the tribes world over, and from Native American culture to African down to pharaohs and or Amazon and Druidic civilizations. You see, even in Druidism, especially that of ancient Icelandic or Gaelic traditions, when the Romans invaded the north, they ended up going into the pagan traditions, specifically that of Druidic practices. They could never defeat the people because every time they would consult the Druids, until one general got wise and wiped out the Druids themselves, and eventually took over most of that culture. I believe, if memory serves, they only conquered half of the Welsh, which is now modern day England. Furthermore, if you go into South America, or let's say Central America, Mexico, the church basically prohibits any dealings with magic and practitioners of magic of any kind. But yet there's videos on YouTube and other, let's just say Google in general. There's actual proof that black magic really does exist down there. A couple of the videos really is, how should I say this? Christian oriented, shaman oriented in a sense, because there's one video called Black Magic that deals with a shaman and a Christian and an atheist that goes down, and they end up going out into the wilderness, out into the desert where black magic is rumored to be practiced. They have a bad experience, yada, yada, yada. You see where that's going. It's always the dark practitioner's fault. Okay. But if you go into, say, South America, such as Colombia, Brazil, Inca, any of the old Aztec regions, you see how people, mostly shamans, would practice both good and light magic. Okay. There's quite a few good videos on there, specifically that of Palo Mayumbi, say for example, Santa Morte, and Quimbanda, Umbanda even. And a lot of them are in Spanish. So if you don't know Spanish, I'd recommend you learn the language unless you have a lot of patience and can put each word into context through a dictionary. All right. Now, if we go into, say, India, okay, there are actually practitioners of magic that live in caves underground. Okay. There's a man that I just became friends with on Facebook that stated in Hinduism that a true worshiper of Shiva, for an example, must waive the attributes of the world, basically shun anything that would prohibit the true dedication to these gods. A warlock that would, or witch, sorcerer, or whatever that literally went into this, according to this article that I read just earlier today on Facebook, stated that anything that prohibited that worship would not be beneficial to the individual. Now, in Satanism, I want to remind you, self-preservation is the highest law. The second highest law is self-gratification. Okay, so things like a family life or that of um, friends would not be beneficial in that sense. Okay, so in a sense, the term warlock would be the dark practitioner, he who or she that would be the hermit. Okay, it's a lonely path. It wasn't until culture became nations under the Judeo-Christian rule that these practices became separate ends of the spectrum as white and black magic. Today in Malawi, Ethiopian, and Congo regions set up task forces to investigate occult criminal crimes. Okay, and this is where a lot down in the Bible Belt here in North America, where they think that Satanism has everything to do with criminal activity, such as prostitution, such as child abduction rings, and sacrificing of children and stuff like that. That stuff is so preposterous that it literally is mind blowing, the ignorance and arrogance in that state. But to see where some of these cults come from, like in Malawi, where they have severed limbs and stuff like that in bags that they carry around, yeah, I can actually see why they consider that. Okay, and that is the difference between. It's one of the different belief structures between light and dark, but also the Western and Eastern traditions. Not mentioning the old ways versus the more modern. I've met people who believe that we don't need to be doing that stuff anymore, that we've evolved beyond that. Um, but anyways, this began during the witch trials and continued up until the late 1980s and early 90s here in the U.S., the United States, which went from witchcraft to the burning, the burning times, the witchcraft trials, and stuff like that into what is known as the Satanic Panic. But mostly today, it happens to in the Malawi region of Africa. On occasion, however, the world is shocked by cults utilizing occult symbolism in glyphs, which point the image they are of the occult. And basically, this is basically a lie. So, even though crimes have occurred, such as Charles Manson and his family, down into other things, and I go on for a little bit there into human sacrificing beliefs to animal sacrificing, such as in voodoo and Palo Mayombe, Quimbanda Umbanda, even in hoodooism, where they sacrifice chickens and goats. Anthony Stewart from Buffy the Vampire Slayer actually did a well organized video on YouTube showing a ritual done of a girl becoming a priestess and a full member of the voodoo and African traditions. So again, you're seeing different structures from different beliefs. Okay. And I would also recommend that if you do want to go down this road and find everything you can about the Warlock traditions, that you also look up the legal terms, one of which is religious land use and institutionalized personal acts, where it says, in equal terms, no government shall impose or implement a land use regulation in a manner that treats a religious assembly or institution on less than equal terms with a non-religious assembly or institution. Non-discrimination. No government shall impose or implement a land use regulation that discriminates against any assembly, institution on the basis of religion or religious discrimination. And executions and limits. No government shall impose or implement a land use regulation that totally excludes religious assemblies from a jurisdiction or unreasonably limits any religious assemblies, institutions, or structures within a jurisdiction. Okay? Now, if you go into the First Amendment, for an example, there are 3 classifications that makes up a protected religion. Following: foundation, and scripture. Okay, so if you have all 3 of these in your coven or your religion, you are basically a religion. You're a protected religion. Okay. Let's see. All right, here we go. Now, a warlock is derived and traced back to the Old Scottish, Old English, Germanic, and Indo-European languages, with its roots meaning oathbreaker and deceiver. This is, of course, can be traced to both the earliest Indo-European and Sanskrit dialects. Okay, which is distinguished between both in male of the both the male and female practitioners, meaning within Wick or Wiki, with respect. However, in the Middle High German, the term Wiccan, as in Wicken, means to bewitch or divine the future. Okay? Such as mediumship, seer, conjurer, stuff like that. Remember the Witch of Endor? Okay? The word is traced back to the spelling we, as in WIH, which means holy, from the Old German dialect, to the Norman, which is spelled with the VE, okay, meaning temple, down to the double V within our alphabet. In the French, the letter is called a double V, whereas the modern English variation of which refers to both male and female practitioners. The term Wicca means revival of witchcraft. Okay, but as I've proven in a lot of posts, from a legal point of view, Wicca and Wiccan is not recognized by the United States of America. Witchcraft is. Okay, So when you think about that in legal terms, keep that in mind. Okay. According to the commonly recorded English, witch, the word is drawn from the Anglo-Saxon etymology, where practitioners were known by the titles such as magus, wizard, warlock, and sorcerers, with each having their own connotation regarding powers, morality, and gender. For an example, the word sorcerer has a wide range of meanings such as 1. In Europe, a sorcerer is known as an evil practitioner, stemming from the Eastern school of thinking that sorcery is a based art. Basically speaking, a sorcerer gets trapped in the accumulation of power without seeking any form of enlightenment. Number 2, in Africa, medicine men are considered witch doctors because they offered healing and protection from evil witches. For this fact, they are held in high regards. The Judeo Christian society, after conquering a nation, told its people that witches were evil and that any and all magic not performed by a priest was evil. Therefore, it was prohibited. There is much evidence to their hatred towards anything not of their Bible. For an example, a warlock's knowledge is derived, well, that's actually where I started off, so I'm going to leave it there. But you see my point. Today, we see warlocks with these almighty powers, okay, within gaming systems. I mean, you look at, say, Mortal Kombat, the video games, or that of the movies. Sun Shi or the wizard, the sorcerers. Okay, you go into gaming systems like live role playing games like D&D, like I said earlier. Okay, you go into Hollywood produced films such as, say, for an example, the Warlocks 1, 2, and 3, starring Julian Sands. Okay, where he's able to do a little nursery rhyme and somebody starts aging over throughout the day, or he's able to rip the face off, the hair off somebody and use it to map his way to you know the stones, okay, and such, utilizing, say, effigies to control an enemy or a target. To say the witches of East End, was it West End, East End, uh, Channing Tatum's ex-wife. Right? Are they actually divorced? Well, I can't remember. But anyways, Jenna, for an example, starred in it. Okay. Now you think of all the powers that they had, where they can just wave their hand and somebody goes flying, like in Charmed. Okay, this is all exaggerated. All right, none of this stuff can be done. But the term warlock has always remained the same in one form or another. People just don't choose to get into the history, the linguistics, the different dialects, the different regions of the world. Okay? Very few practitioners that I know of literally has gotten into this aspect. Hans Holzer to Christopher Penziak and a couple more. Okay? I would recommend The Outer Temple of Witchcraft and the book Witches. Okay? I would also recommend Mastering Witchcraft by Paul Huzon to you. Okay? Really delve into the research yourself and see where it takes you. Okay? With all the resources at my disposal, I'm constantly coming up with new things to where this knowledge is coming from. Even now that I'm in the Cabal system, the Mazajira Cabal workings as a practicing necromancer. A necromancer is a title given to an individual practitioner, much like the term warlock, witch, wizard, sorcerer, okay, mage, magi. but only you can do your own homework. I cannot do it for you. I can lead you to the material, but you have to be the one to go into it. You're the one that's going to decide to work in it. Okay, and hey, brother John Saunders, how you doing? And yes, I am actually having a good night. My son's in bed, his mother's in bed, and I'm out here doing what I love doing. And Jack Stone, if Jack Stone, I would recommend Morpheus to you. Morpheus is one of many sorcerers, many deitas that deals with dream sorcery. Um, he's actually the one that most go to because of the fact that he's able to control dreams, he's able to teach dreams. So I would recommend that you get into him if that's the path that you want to work with. Okay. And Anubis. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you liked the material I put forth. And Seeking Serpent 6. How you doing? Mm, exactly. But yeah, there's also a lot of other controversy. I mean, a lot of people, like I said, within groups, specifically social media outlets like Facebook groups, they will gangbang you. They will start, hounding you and making jokes and basically pissing you off until you finally defend yourself and you're the one that's in trouble. So they ban you from the group, which is the goal. And yet they, those who are doing this, remain in the group. I can't tell you how many times I've seen this in Facebook groups, which is why I don't really get into groups that much. So, I mean, but every tradition has a viewpoint of what a warlock is. You take the, what's his name, Dr. I think his name's Robert Johnson. He's from over in, what is it, Italy, I think? But he's a member of the Church of Satan, and he actually wrote a book that's equal or the equivalent of the Satanic Witch, called the Warlock's Book. Very astute, and a lot of cognitive thought went into this book. When I finally got my hands on it, I decided to read. When I read it, I took down notes. I haven't had a chance to type them up yet, but the notes that I got from them, the thoughts like putting on a persona, becoming that persona, is much like in necromancy, you put on the clothing of the dead. And Palo Mayumbi in Santeria practices, when you do a ritual, you are working with an ancestral line, so therefore you want to wear the clothing of a deceased loved one, like your father or your mother, okay, your brother, sister, whatever, so that you can commune with them. And it's very interesting that how many traditions actually go for this. So I mean, it's really fascinating. But like I said, even though Santeria and Palo Mayumbi are considered to each two separate things, the world views them as one and the same. Well, you consider in the United States, cannibalism is actually legal. That's right. And what's ironic, though, is as I stated in my last video, you can actually buy a corpse. You can buy a leech, a lick in German, in Russian terms, English even, which is now modern day corpses or cadaver. And there's different prices for each one. So, I mean, it depends on what you're seeking. So, yes, you can do that. Salute 367. But as a warlock is, my experience within the field of witchcraft and sorcery has led me to come to believe and practice as a means not only of power, but of control, discipline, focus. A warlock is a conjurer. A warlock is somebody who literally is a solo practitioner, much like a Satanist, in my opinion. Okay. So when I say that a hermit is the best definition, with a hermit becoming the hierophant or wizard, sorcerer even, it can be a title. It's basically a title placed on a practitioner that prefers solitary means compared to that of a coven. Now, as for practitioners today, you have Christian Day, who refers to himself as the modern day warlock. He's been praised by both Christopher Penziak and a few others, okay, within the Witch's Book of the Dead. You can also go into the aspects of, how should I say this? People who become warlock get into the practices are more open today than they were 25 years ago. Hell, even 15 years ago, 10 years ago. And it's ironic and uncanny how many people have literally opened up and become more tolerant of the term warlock. Many people are now taking on the term or the term warlock, okay, which is pretty cool. So I mean, taking on the term warlock and most importantly being comfortable with referring to yourself as a warlock is something that has taken in a much very good strive. Okay, it's a step in the right direction because of the fact when you go back over 1,000 years ago, warlocks, witches, and sorcerers were the equivalent of a shaman. Even in necromancy, it was considered that way. They were wise men and women of the traditions. Today, you get into most covens, you have a priestess running the show. You look at Farah's Witch's Bible. The priestess has more powerful than a male. Right here in the state of Maine, there's a group called the Temple of the Feminine Divine, where a male cannot rise up the ranks. It is run solely by females, okay, in the hierarchy. You go into the Pagan Pride Association, it's made up of both male and female practitioners, okay? And if you go underneath the Witch's Voice, which was started, I think, back in the 1980s, maybe 70s, I think. Can't remember. It was maybe the 90s. It's a group where you can find articles. It's a group where you can find local covens in your area and everything. Okay. So I mean, even events, which is awesome. So I mean, that's another great source of information that you can utilize within your practices. So for those of you who really want to get into the traditions and learn as much as you can to benefit your own unique styles of practice, feel free. Utilize the information I just gave here. Okay. But most importantly, do the work for yourself, not for somebody else. I can tell you to go out and do the work, but it's not up to me if you do it or not. That's up to you. All right. So, with that said, have a good night. And until next time, this Dark Sorcerer is out. And before I log off, I want to say this. I want to thank everybody who has participated in here and made an appearance. Hail to you. If you have any questions, feel free to message me on Facebook or leave a message here. I always reply. It may take me a little bit, but I will reply. Okay? With that said, have a good night, ladies and gentlemen.